Everybody will go down this lane. You will come face to face with an assisted living. And so I always tell people the more that you can educate yourself about the process and what this all entails, better prepared you're going to be to make decisions.
All right, welcome to Quest for Keys, where we highlight key moments in entrepreneurs' lives that unlock doors on their path to success. I'm your host, Hone Tai, and joining me is the ever-inspiring Alvin Wee. And today it is my pleasure to welcome Jesse Quezada, a dynamic real estate entrepreneur who turns residential homes into thriving assisted living facilities for the elderly and adults with disabilities. Combining his real estate expertise with his wife's healthcare background, Jesse has built a successful business focused on quality care and innovative housing solutions. With a proven track record in real estate, he has also become a dedicated mentor, bringing with him 15 years of coaching experience. Outside of his professional endeavors, Jesse has a family of a wife of 22 years and 4 children. If you're looking to figure out how to participate in what people are calling the silver tsunami, then you're going to want to stay tuned until the end. Welcome, Jesse Quezada. What's up, man?
Thank you so much for having me, man. I'm excited. Me and Elvin have been talking for some time about this and ready to get after it.
Yeah, so just a little backstory here. So I'm entering into this industry as well. This whole thing about assisted living. My mother has Alzheimer's, and so in my journey to find a home for her, I quickly realized, man, there's an opportunity here, but there's also a need that's not being met. And so in my search to kind of find a solution, I ran into Jesse Quesada. He runs a meetup. And I was just so in awe about how this guy is open and willing to teach people and coach people how to start this business. And I got to tell you, this is a very, very well guarded business. It doesn't seem like, anytime I ask someone, hey, how do you do certain things? They don't want to give their secrets. Like, you can't talk to anybody about this. Meanwhile, Jesse's opening up these meetups, inviting anybody who is interested because his whole mission is to scale this and help people. And I was just in awe with this guy. And I'm like, man, one day I want to work with this guy. And so he and I have been talking for a little bit now, and we had decided to partner together and open up heartfelt care homes. And so I just thought this was a great episode where we can help anyone figure out how to start this game. If you guys have any questions, you can probably drop us a note later on. But man, welcome to the podcast, Jesse. I'm excited about this show, man.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've been around me long enough to know that I could talk about this stuff all day long, every day, and definitely have a passion for it. So I'm looking forward to getting in, really diving deep into this industry in general.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to this call because, hey, I'm ready to make a transition. I kind of hate this residential game that I'm playing, the way I'm playing it with long term tenants, right? I got three, not one, not two, but three water bills over $800 because of a toilet flap that didn't flap shut. And the tenant was like, la da 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 da, and it just didn't call me or whatever, didn't know their toilet was running. $800 bill times three. Come on, right? That kills all the cash flow for the whole property. So I'm very excited because I was doing my research. I heard about your business model and how much money you get to make. But for those who did not research, Jesse, do you mind telling us a little bit about your business model and how much you can make and why you transitioned and all that fun stuff that somebody might care about?
Yeah, definitely. So, for me, it really started. If we really start from the very beginning, I was before this, I was flipping homes. So I've owned multiple businesses. I started my first business when I was 19 years old. It was actually a daycare. I grew up in a daycare household, so when my daughter was born, and I needed to stay home, but obviously still make an income for my family. I ventured right into it. Got licensed by the state, and if you ever seen the movie Daddy Daycare, that was literally me. And so from that point, I think that was the early part of not just my entrepreneur journey, but understanding state licensing and what that all entailed. analysts that come inside your home to inspect, that kind of stuff. And, kind of fast forward after other businesses that I got into, I started flipping homes. And it was always something that I was interested in. I loved, just watching at that time, obviously, like Flip or Flop and all these shows were on television. So it was something that was very intriguing, something that I felt like, I could do that. And so in 2014, we started flipping homes. And we were doing really well. At one point, we were doing 5 or 6 homes at a time, really, really busy. But then I started seeing the shift. That was 14. So 15, 16, 15 was good. 16, things started slowing down. Agents that were bringing me, 5 or 6 homes, to look at a time. Now they were bringing me one. So I really started seeing the shift in the real estate market. And for me, I wanted to continue to stay in real estate, but obviously find what that next thing was for me. And at the time, my wife was a nurse, and she kept, at the time, I don't know where it came from, but they were, back then, I haven't heard it very often now, but they were calling them six packs, and six packs because there were 6 residents in a home. And she kept telling me about this 6 packs, and I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was too busy. And finally, when things started slowing down, I went back to her and I said, hey, tell me everything about the whole idea again of the 6 packs. And she's like, yeah, I go inside these homes, they're regular residential homes. And I go see my patients, and for her, they're patients obviously for the home, they're residents.
Let's one second, Jesse. Sorry to excuse me for a second, but let's break down what a six pack means, because I know I'm looking at Hone right now. He's probably thinking like, oh yeah, a couple of beers. Oh yeah, I can handle that. But let's just break down what a six pack is really quick.
Yeah, so 6 pack is that 6 residents live in a home. So for the state of California, 6 residents and below, we don't need we don't need anybody's permission. I can go get a fire clearance and get licensed by the state, and I can open up anywhere I want. It's as soon as you go over that 6 beds. So you go 7 beds and above, you got to go knocking at the city's door and ask for permission, because at that point they look at it as a commercial use. And so when we're talking about 6 packs, we're talking about 6 residents that live in a home together.
Yeah, and we're also talking residential here. So Hone, this means like any single family can have 6 beds, and it doesn't mean 6 bedrooms. Actually, it just means 6 residents in a house. You can actually have
Correct.
2 residents. Yeah, you can have a 3 bedroom and have 2 residents in each room, and so that constitutes a six pack. And that's what Jesse and I has talking about. Now you can probably have more than 6, but you'll need what's called a conditional use permit, and that's a whole different discussion. So, anyways,
Yep.
Jesse, sorry to
Yep.
interrupt. Go ahead, keep
No,
going.
you're good. I'm glad. And again, anytime, like I said, this is all stuff that I got in from my experience. So anytime that I get into something you guys don't know, feel free to stop me at any time. So yeah, so after I went back to her, I started doing due diligence on it, and I was like, wait, hold on. People are paying 4, 5, 6, $7,000 a month to live in these homes. Other names are like boarding care, assisted living, 6 packs. There's so many different names. For us in California, for whatever reason, we use the acronym of RCFE, Residential Care Facilities for the Elderly. There's no other state that uses that, so I don't know where California got it from. So yeah, so at that point, I started due diligence on the business, and I couldn't believe like what I was seeing. Coming from my background, nobody's affording $4,000+ a month just to have a loved one cared for, and so uh, at that point the light bulb went off. So for me, I looked at it as one, could be an opportunity for me to stay in real estate, obviously, but up until that point, everything that we had rental wise was out of state. And I always told my wife, because of the laws in California, we will never have rental property in California. Everything will be out of state. We'll have our primary here, and that's it. But when that bulb went off, I said, "Oh, hold on. You mean that I can be the tenant and I get to be the landlord?" And so it kind of gets unless I'm kicking myself out, it kind of gets rid of that whole idea of tenant first in California. Um, so yeah, so we started moving forward. That was when I started due diligence. That was probably May of 2015. No, I'm sorry, 2016. And by July, we had our first property in escrow. And I did it very strategically. So we made sure that we leased the property first. We bought an existing business. And at that point, for me, it was like, okay, I need to make sure that this is the business for us. What I didn't want to do is get into a specialty asset and get stuck with it if we figured out this wasn't for us. And so we leased it. We closed escrow August, and yeah, the next part is a whole nother story. And we took over August 1st, and my wife showed up. She's a big bookworm, so she loves to learn. And she showed up with her pen and paper in hand, ready to learn from the old owner. And he handed her the keys and said, "Hey, it's your business now." And you thought you had a full staff. The gentleman I fired yesterday, and the gal is off. Today's her day off. So here's my wife stuck in this house all alone, not knowing what to do, how to do it. And she will tell you going in and out to see her patients and actually taking care of operations on a day to day basis are two different things. And yeah, that was kind of our introduction to the business.
Got it. So, from my understanding, if I were to open up a assisted living facility in a residential home, let's say I have a 3 bedroom house, right? And in Philadelphia, I forget if it's 3 or 4 unrelated parties who can live in one house. So let's just say it's 4 people, right? And so I have this house. I got 4 people in there. How labor intensive, how operationally heavy is this business versus, say, a traditional long term tenant real estate business?
Yeah, so there's pros and cons on both sides. So when you ask the direct question, how operational intensital, very intense as far as the intensity on the operation side, vary. I mean, there is things that come up every single day, and that's why for me, I always for in Philadelphia, they probably have some kind of admin course. I always reference back. Anybody that is looking to get into the business, I always tell them go take the admin course. That's going to give you a really rundown of like what it entails, and what that's going to allow you to do is kind of pick where you want to be in the business, because there's a place for everybody. Most people, and I can tell you, most people when they take the RCFE admin course in California, they say this isn't for me, and so then they become the investor because they want nothing to do with the day to day
Tell me
operations.
about tell me about the day to day operations. What is it that they're discovering that they're like, whoa, 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 nope, investor only? So what is it that the course would lay out for somebody?
Yeah, so they're giving you the whole layout of what the day consists of. So when you're talking about getting up in the morning, from the operational side, everything is you and I do the same thing that our facilities do inside the home. The only difference is now you're responsible for 6 other people, and at times even more. So you have staff. So we have staff there 24/7. So they're helping residents get up in the morning. They're helping them, bathe, get ready for breakfast. If during snack time or during different type of exercise times. So all day there's a schedule. But like I said, it's no different than you and I would do on a daily day to day basis. The only difference is now you're dealing with having to not just have your staff watch the residents, but then you're on top of the staff to make sure that they're doing what they need to do. So that's why it's important to have policies and procedures and things in place that any other business would have. And I believe that's where the biggest problem sometimes in the industry is that a lot of these older operators, they've been operating a certain way and been able to get away with it. But now that people are really starting to look into the industry, really starting to look at how staff is getting paid, how they're actually operating the business. It should be operated like a business, and so you have the two you have to put together. So you're taking care of people on a day to day basis, but then there's a whole business side that you need to make sure that you merge in order to be successful.
And how many people do you have to have per client? Can you have like one staff member per one person, 2 people, 3 people, 6 people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the model was created. So this model has been around for over 40 years. So it's not a new model. But the model was created is to help costs. So if somebody has, let's say they bring in somebody one on one inside their home, they're going to be paying anywhere between 15 and I've seen as much as $20,000 a month, that they're going to be paying that staff member. So the model was created to like, okay, how do we if that's how much it's going to cost to for labor, how do we put that over a couple different residents rather than one resident? And so when you think about it, when you have, let's say it's costing $20,000 to operate from a labor standpoint, but now you have six residents that are all paying, let's say they're paying easy numbers, they're paying uh, $6,000. That's $36,000 coming in that they can spread out that labor costs.
And when you say the operations costs $20,000 a month to run the house, how many people is that? How many employees are we talking about?
Yeah, so for us, we're typically in between that $18,000 to $20,000 range, and we have in on one particular home we'll have about 7 or 8 employees they're all different times. So the way our schedule goes is they all work 8 hour shifts. So they come in at 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and then we have a knock shift that's awake from 11 to 7 in the morning. And then just depending on like the needs of the residents, we'll bring in additional staff. So like in the morning time is a really busy time, so we'll have additional staff at that time, and then sometimes in the evening, just depending on the need.
So in that house, right, you have it's 24/7. There's at least one person at the house. Is there often two people at the house at the same time, three people at the house at the same time?
Correct. So there's always one person. Yeah, there's always one person.
Is it ever just one?
Yeah, so we always have one in our knock shift. There's always just one.
Okay. So during knock shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., there's not two people during knock shift. Just one person is enough. Okay.
For the 6 bed, yes. So like we have one right now that we're managing that has they can have up to 20 residents. So now obviously at 20 residents we're going to add an additional staff. So it's all about the ratio, and then obviously the care needs.
What is that ratio that I'm trying to figure out? So is it 1 to 6? Is it 1 to 10 now that I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Because you're like, do you have that ratio number?
No, so there is no real ratio. With as far as, and again, I'm speaking from state of California. For the state of California, there's no specific ratio that they look for. What you have and what they make it very clear is you have to have sufficient staff for the care needs of your residents. So that could change. So let's say you have six. Let's say we have six residents that are all independent. They're more looking for a social component. That's all they're in the home for. Then at that point, you only need one because you're not doing much care. Now, if let's say you have six residents and they're all bedridden, now you're going to need probably two on each shift with an extra person that's available at nighttime. So it all varies. There's no like specific way or a calculation to do it. It's all just depending on the care needs of the residents, and making sure that you have that and the biggest thing is obviously an emergency, that if there is an emergency that you have the sufficient staff to get there that's going to get the residents out and make sure that they're safe. But for the most part, yeah, on a day-to-day basis, it's all just dependent on the needs of your specific residents that are moving in.
Gotcha. All right. So it's just a matter of if the person who is on site that day is capable of delivering the quality service that the client is expecting and needing.
Yes, and like I said, that's from a California thing because I don't. Every state is different. Every states have their own regulations.
I
I can
get
tell you,
that.
like, let's give you an example. Like, let's say for California, we don't necessarily, one of the requirements as a staff, we don't necessarily need to hire CNAs. We do at times, like some come to us and we have hired CNAs. But like, let's say the state of Washington, you can't hire anybody as a care staff unless they're a CNA. So like I said, every state is, so you might, in Philadelphia, they might be very specific on, hey, for every 3 people, you need to have one person on site. I don't know what that looks like for California, but I mean, for Philadelphia, but California, like I said, it's very specific on have sufficient staffing for the care needs of the residents.
And then so we can back up a little bit too. So to clarify some of that, so uh, Jesse, and you can probably answer this, Jesse. I mean, I could answer it, but I want you to answer it for us. But you have the option to actually choose the residents that come in, correct?
Yes, 100%. So every resident that comes and applies, um, you're going to take them through a due diligence process, and so it would be no different than, if you're looking for a single family rental, for your single family rental, you're going to, credit check, you're going to do all these things. We don't do those type of things typically, or from our experience, anybody that's looking for a home, they have the financial resources to obviously pay for the home. So the main thing, always what we're looking for is what are their needs and can we handle their needs. So we take memory care, so we take residents with dementia, Alzheimer's, but there is a certain level of dementia that we cannot take, and that we won't take because, again, it's at the safety of residents, at the safety of staff, all that kind of stuff.
It kind of sounds to me, and this is just me thinking out loud, but if you go with a larger facility, now you're going to have to use that kind of variance that Alvin was talking about. But if you go larger facility, let's say 20, 30, whatever, and then let's say you have a staff of 4 in the property, all of a sudden your business becomes less hands on because let's say you are going to schedule 4 people to be on site. And let's say one person calls out. It's not like a scramble because those 3 may be uncomfortable, but only for the day or and only for the shift, really. Versus if you had a smaller house where it has one person and that person calls out, and maybe you don't even find out. Maybe that person didn't even call out. Maybe they're just like they just didn't show up and you don't know it. So then it's like, there's a problem here, right? So it's almost like if we can go a little larger, then all of a sudden your operations maybe becomes less daunting, if you will. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, you're so spot on there, and that's why we always say 3 homes. Like, so let's say somebody that's trying to get into the industry, we usually tell them, if you can have 3 homes, that is really, to me, the sweet spot, and if they're close, because that's the thing is, there was a time, again, when I came from my flipping side where I was like, hey, wherever the numbers make sense, we're gonna go. And from an operational side, I figured out really quick, yeah, that doesn't work. Me sending my, I'm in Orange County. Me sending my crew out to San Bernardino to go do a flip is a lot different than, somebody, exactly what you're saying, somebody calling out and I'm an hour away. Like that. That is, yes. So to answer your question, 100%. Whether it's 20 on one home or whether it's 18 over 3 homes, when you get to a point where you can scale a little bit more, it does become easier because we see it all the time. Somebody calls out of their second shift at facility A, and facility B, they're looking to work a double that day. So she just, as soon as her shift's done, she goes down to facility A and does her second shift. And things get really, really, from an operational standpoint, a little bit easier for sure, when you have that scale.
Does that happen? Do people want to work doubles?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I want to add something to that too. So there are 2 different models. I actually looked into the bigger facility model as well. And what I've realized about that is number one, there's a scarcity in place for those bigger facilities. They don't necessarily exist, and you're going to have to compete and buy an existing business. And those are harder to come by. Number two, you're going to see a lot of these big buildings that are the bigger facilities, right? They're multi level. So the level of care is actually a little bit different. Like someone like who might be more disabled may not be suited for a bigger facility like that. So, and I think even during COVID, and Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, but even during COVID, those bigger facilities, because their ratios are actually not as good as the smaller residential facilities, ratio in terms of caregiver versus residents, they're like maybe 1 to 20, 1 to 25. And so the level of care is not the same. So there's a lot of little variances. And this is why I think, Jesse and I kind of agree that, look, there's more single families out there, right? And we can probably produce the same amount of level of economies of scale by expansion and maybe even limit our risk because if something happens to a big facility, that entire big facility is then in trouble as opposed to like having smaller houses here and there in close proximity, you can still separate each one because technically speaking, each house is a separate facility. So, it's just 2 different models. And for us, and Jesse can speak to this, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of people after COVID, a lot of people are actually also getting sick in those big facilities because if someone gets infected, everybody gets infected. They're all in one facility, and with the higher ratio of residents, man, that's just that's not good. So
Yeah, and I can add to that because we saw in 2020, we had our one of our best years in 2020, and it's hard for people to understand that or even grasp that idea because there were so many businesses that were either closing down or having a really tough time. And I can tell you, I still feel why we had our best year was because residents were looking or families were looking for their loved one to get in a smaller, intimate setting, and so they were leaving the big box facilities, because and I would always tell when I would give tours, I would always tell them like, look, we cannot stop COVID from coming in. Like that's not. But what I can say is that it is a little bit easier to manage at a smaller scale, because again, you have a hundred bed facility. You've probably got 30 people turning over every 8 hours, going in and out. They're going out to see their families and back and forth, and you could just imagine. And at that time, we had 1 to 2 people turning over every shift. So to manage it was a little bit easier, but definitely didn't. It's not to say that it couldn't have happened to us, and affected us the way it did some of the big, whether it be assisted living or even the skilled nursing facilities that it did affect. But yeah, Alvin's right. I mean, some of the bigger facilities, their clientele is different. They are Most of them are typically there more for, they're more independent, and they're more there for a social component. Um, and so it gets a little bit easier, again, going back to that gray area that the state says that you just have to be sufficient. It's a little bit easier to go 1 to 15 to 1 to 20 residents, because everybody's kind of doing their own thing. You just got to make sure that obviously, that you're there when they need you.
Do you have like a standard operating procedure, an SOP, standard operating procedure that says that if person in shift one doesn't show up, then person who's doing shift three can't leave yet? Anything like that?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. And they know. I mean, obviously we're all of our staff is fingerprinted and all that kind of good stuff. So they also know that they can get in trouble. I mean, they can literally get in trouble. At that point, you're abandoning residents. And so yeah, if let's say somebody called out, or something happened, or that second person couldn't come on, they cannot leave the shift. And we have had that before, where they cannot leave, and at that point they're some of them are some of them are happy and some of them aren't, and some of them are happy because they get overtime, and some of them aren't because they want to go home.
Got it. And from like a financial standpoint, if a person stays, they are getting overtime, like time and a half.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So having the smaller,
At least
right,
in our
right.
homes they are. I don't know how everybody else operates.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm trying to figure this out because, like, I do now maybe am leaning towards the smaller facility because you can deliver high quality service. It doesn't, just because it's a smaller facility doesn't mean you can't deliver the high quality service. And to
Correct.
Alvin's point, insulating the possibility of a disease spreading, it's pretty cool where you have 1 in 6 people who can infect you, or 1 in 8 people who can infect you, versus 1 in 50 or whatever like that, right? There's a higher probability in a big facility.
Exactly.
So
Just to add to that, and why again I love the smaller model, because there is no brands. There is nothing like I know people that are in South Orange County that have 17 homes, and every home is ran differently. Like there is no, you're talking about SOPs. You're talking about, all these things where like it's one, McDonald's doesn't have the best burgers, but people know when they see the M what they're getting, and that's why they go there. So to me, that was the other part that, and why I love the motto is to really create something that hasn't been done yet. And so I'm really, that's one of the parts I definitely am excited about.
perfect. Let's go down this rabbit hole, right? I want you to put your thinking cap on. I want you to actually put your dreaming cap on.
Got
If
it.
you could, ideal world, anything that you say will happen, and like that, breeze. How would you design your perfect business? What does it look like? It's smaller houses, six residents. Is that, one staff member? You have this kind of machinery in there to service them this way. Like, what does that look like? What is the ideal money is no object Jesse's dream business?
Yeah, that's man. This guy, and I understand why you got him as the co-host now.
Aside from partnering with me, Jesse.
Other other than
So
partnering with the ever inspiring Alvin Wee, what
yeah,
is your ideal?
okay. So the idea for me is, and it's really, and we'll get there. We'll definitely get there. Is to create and take from a lot of the other big corporations that have done a really good job in their lane. Give you, i.e., let's say In and Out. So In and Out has their own university. So they actually train offsite at a different location before they're actually inside the location. And so I would love to get to a point where we have a scale where we actually send people through almost like a university of training, um, before they even touch. And don't get me wrong, we do training now, but it's 40 hours, typically about 40 hours, 5 days of different type of training. And then there obviously, but that's all inside the home. I would love to do that where they feel like they're going to school, and they have that, because again, it gives a different presence of like what the expectation is, what the standard is, and so when they're now put into that home, they're ready to rock and roll. So that would be one big part, and like I said, we'll get there. I'm there's no doubt in my mind we'll get there. The next phase of that would definitely be to understand, where the market is and what we're trying to do. Like, is it going to continue to be the assisted living side on the RCFE or elderly, so that we can, is it focus going to be more memory based, where it's more dementia? Like I said, right now we do take residents with dementia and Alzheimer's, but we are very very strict on what our criteria is. And so does that open up, so that it's more of a lockdown facility in a home? Because right now we don't have that. We don't take residents that need lockdown facilities, and we just don't do that. So I don't know if that will be the next phase of what that looks like. And then obviously the next part is just making sure that we continue to expand, so that we can give opportunities. And that opportunity, when I say opportunities, I'm talking about not just from an investor that's looking to park their money into something that is giving back to the community and does a great service, but then also potential hardworking care staff that would never have the opportunity to own their own home, or be a part of that business side. So yeah, it's from the grand scheme of thing. And like I said, there's no doubt in my mind we're going to do all this. It's just a matter of finding the right type of people that will surround us and help us accomplish this.
All right, let's fast track all of it because it doesn't sound really difficult to obtain, right? Because there's a guy that I was listening to on a podcast who does like doggy haircuts, right? And the hardest part about doggy haircuts is not the demand. There's so much demand that people are willing to book 5 months out, right? The bottleneck is having the people who know how to cut dogs. So he created his own doggy haircut school. And it's like, yo, you'll get to go to doggy haircut school. But if you don't work for us for at least 2 years after doggy haircut school, then
That's
you
it.
owe us $6,000 or whatever it is, right? And so he's
Yep.
got that. So to put that in place, I don't think would be that difficult. So, okay, boom, done. Now, in terms of your decision between, do you go with the people who have like the mental thing, or is it just a physical thing or whatever? I think that's just a decision because both are going to be required. You just have to make that decision. Do we want to do this, or
Correct.
do we want to do that, or do we want to do both? And once you make the decision, you then create the houses around that. I don't think there's any kind of market indicator that needs to tell you what to do. You have to tell it what you are doing, and then it will respond to you. So it's a
100%.
little reverse, right? And then finally, you were saying something that was like, whoa, hold on. You were saying something about like the caregiver owning the home. Is this what I'm hearing? Like one of the caregivers maybe owns the home and then you run the business out of it and they have a piece. Is that?
No, yeah, yeah. So almost.
So go
So
into
the
that.
I
Go into that.
yeah, yeah. So the idea is to continue to find. I'm like I said, I coach football for 15 years. So for me, I'm always recruiting. And even now, I mean, there's a gal that has great customer service at Subway, and I'm trying to get her. I'm trying to pull her on our side. I'm always recruiting. So it's finding talent and hardworking people that maybe resource wise would never have the opportunity to become a part owner in something like this and give that opportunity. So we would partner with them, but they would be the operator. Obviously, they would have to be trained by us, going back to the university and the stuff that we're talking about. But knowing that we have confidence in this person, they've checked off all the boxes. Let's present an opportunity here because you're 100% right. And I say it all the time. There's so much money that needs to be parked. There's so much cash that needs to be parked somewhere that I don't feel like we will ever have an issue with finding homes and converting them. The only issue is that I'm only one person. My wife's only one person. My mother-in-law is a big part of our operations, only one person. And so it's finding people that can become us from an operational standpoint and can oversee that particular home. And so that's where the opportunity lies. The rest of it we can do. We can put up, we can put, obviously, finance it, get it all set up, but it's handpicking those operators that are going to be ready to go.
Yeah, just to expand on that, Hon. So here in California, you can get a certification. Like for me, I got I'm a certified RCFE administrator, right? Which means I can run facilities. So we can open up shop. I can open up a home. I can be the admin on one of those. Problem is here we're limited to using our certificates for only two homes. So for someone like me, I can only open really two. So at some point, that's going to be a bottleneck, and this is why Jesse and I are thinking about opening a school and start developing people who can start running these operations for us, integrate them into the business, do a little bit of profit sharing perhaps. So we're still kind of ironing that out, but that's kind of the vision here, is to expand on that and scale at the same time.
Well, thank God you guys have me. Oh my God.
And
Thank God you
hold
guys
on,
have
let
me.
me
Okay.
let me and let me add to that because it goes back to your question before is would we you asked would Jesse go out to Philadelphia and operate? I'm not going out to Phil. I love to visit. I love to visit you. We can see all the cool stuff. But this model is how we get to Philadelphia. Is because there's an operator there that is ready to operate or hasn't been. They're not ready to operate, and we can send them to the training and get them ready to operate. And now we can open up in Philadelphia or anywhere in the U.S. Does that make sense?
Of course it does. Come on, man. I'm following along. My vision. I've already painted the vision of how this is going to go down. Are you guys familiar with the ESOP? You guys know what an ESOP is?
Yep.
Employee stock ownership plan, ESOP.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
the
yeah.
employees own stock in the company, and they have to work there for X number of years to get vested and all that kind of stuff. But you guys can say, hey, you work here, you become an owner in the company via ESOP, right? And so
Yeah,
that could be the
yeah,
business model.
yeah.
And
One
then
hundred percent.
and then you get somebody to do the research, you get an analyst, whoever, to figure out the laws in every state. And so it's like, okay, where are you from? Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. This is what you got to follow. And then just like being a real estate agent, in order to become a real estate agent, you have to pay for school. You have to pay for real estate agent school. You have to pay for your real estate agent insurance. You have to pay for all that kind of
Yep,
stuff. So what you
yep,
may have been thinking is like, okay, you want to work here, fantastic. You're going to go to Hamburger U, right? And you're going to learn all about the process of becoming a home runner, right? Well, yeah, maybe, but then maybe they pay you instead of you paying them, right? You flip the script on them because they're going to be equity owners. It's like why would anybody pay to become a real estate agent? It's like
yeah,
because the
yeah.
opportunity's there. Why would anybody
Correct.
pay Hone, Jesse, and Alvin? You see what I did there? I slipped my name in that trio, right? So
I
why would
love it. I
anybody
love
pay Hone, Jesse, and Alvin
it.
to go to the Hamburger U, right? Why would anybody pay to go to that? Well, because the opportunity is that you guys get to work in our assisted living facility operation. You get to work within this, which is an ESOP, which means you're going to get ownership and you're going to have all this upside. So it's like, wow. I will pay upfront, invest in myself so that I can have a piece of that organization.
One
So
hundred
it's
percent.
like, come on, baby, let's go. All right, what else? What else you got? What other vision? Come on, we can paint it bigger.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's honestly that's really in a nutshell. I mean, it's not hard. It's not rocket science. I tell people all the time, anybody can operate one of these homes. Yeah, and don't get me wrong with that statement. It is a lot of work. There is a lot of work, but if you're willing to put the work, you have the heart. Because at some point, things are not gonna, things could come up. Obviously, our business is death a lot of times. We deal with death on a, I don't want to say day-to-day basis, but on a pretty consistent basis compared to the other businesses. So it's understanding all this. But I think the opportunity is to make an impact on that, make an impact on both sides, create something that's everlasting for residents, to have dignity on their later days, and then the other side is create opportunity for, like I said, somebody that maybe they think that they're going to be a caregiver their whole life, and then all of a sudden, the three of us come through, and all of a sudden there's an opportunity presented for them, and they've been a caregiver for 20 years. They know the inside and out. They just don't know the business side. And I can tell you from experience, and Alvin has experienced this, that the industry is a really, really closed industry as far as the information that people are trying to put out. And so when you really think about that, it is it's a very scarcity mindset. And so when you are different now, we now are saying, hey, there's enough for everybody. As a matter of fact, we can't even keep up. There's so much need that the three of us, the four of us, the five that, like, to multiply, it would have to be by the hundreds to keep up with the demand. And so understanding that, and I think that's where the opportunity lays on that side for sure.
Yeah, and it does take a special person to operate one of these things too. From a caregiver standpoint. Look, man, like I think I mentioned earlier, my mom has Alzheimer's. I'm her caregiver right now. Couple days ago, she fell, and it was just heartbreaking. It's really tough, for someone like me who's, like just someone like me who might have the capacity or even the finance and wealth to maybe support anything. But man, when you start seeing your parent go down, it's really, really challenging. Like to pick her up and change her diapers. I mean, that's heartbreaking, dude. So a lot of people don't last very long in this industry just because it's a very difficult industry. It's a high barrier of entry to that extent as well. So, I think there's an opportunity there. Not to say that it's looking at it from a business standpoint, but just it takes a special person to go in this direction. It's you gotta be selfless.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. And I say it all the time. Everybody will go down this lane. At some point, you will come face to face with an assisted living, whether it's your in-laws, whether it's your parents, your grandparents, or whether it's yourself. At some point, you will. And so I always tell people, the more that you can educate yourself about the process, and what this all entails, the better prepared you're going to better prepared you're going to be to make decisions. And obviously Alvin's going through it right now. I went through it with a family, good family, a friend of ours. She was my daughter's nurse for many years. But before she passed, she didn't. She had family, but they were all out of in Canada, and so she ended up putting me as her power of attorney, POA, and all that kind of stuff. But I watched her. Watched her go through this downward spiral where she was completely independent, very, very, one of the toughest ladies I've ever met, to all the way to the end where she hallucinations. She thought everybody was after her. It's really, really tough. So, and when you're going through that with a loved one, it makes it that much tougher. So yeah, it definitely takes a special person to be involved in the industry, and that's where I'm saying that it's these operators are definitely going to be handpicked operators, because they're going to definitely have to go through some things to figure out if they're the right partners.
Yeah.
Have you figured out any kind of like disc assessment? Also, have you figured out like, is it better like men, women? Have you figured out like they come from this kind of industry or they have this kind of job or anything like that? Have you thought about that or have that kind of detail?
Yeah, no, we haven't gone through that. Evan and I have been talking about that and creating that as far as like,
Is that
part of
why
the
you guys are
interview
laughing?
process. And yeah, we were that was that conversation like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I finally introduced him to the disc profile, trying to teach him that how to do the personality test and all that stuff. So, that's going. We're still working on it, so we're still ironing that out. But it's going to happen. It's a necessary step to do, especially in this industry. But like let's back up a little bit. So we've been talking about RCFE this entire time. So I actually want to introduce the other model that you and I are working on. Which I just bought two houses that Jesse's going to be partnering. I'm going to be partnering with Jesse to kind of run this thing. It's called ARF. Jesse, break down ARF for us.
Yeah, so ARF is the exact same idea of the RCFE. RCFE, like I said, is for the elderly, but the ARF is adult residential facility. So on the adult residential facilities, our clients there are 18 to 59, and they have some kind of developmental disability. So they cannot live on their own, and they need most need 24-hour care. Some, they're pretty independent, so at times they can ride the bus, they can go to the beach on their own, those kind of things. But for the most part, they need guidance, 24 hours a day.
Yeah. And so what's interesting about this model that's a little bit different from the RCFE. With the RCFE, you got structural things that you're going to have to do and convert the house for it to work for the residents that are 16 over. Like you have to have ramps, you have to have potentially wider doors. You got to potentially have exits on every room because of fire requirements. That being said, for the ARF, what's interesting about this is I just bought two 4-bedroom houses that are practically ready to go, and you just rehab them just like you would rehab a normal rental. Doesn't need to have ramps. You can have tubs instead of curbless showers. So it's a really cool way to expand. And also, we're dealing with the regional centers as opposed to doing advertising. Jesse, you want to break that down for us? What the difference is with that alone, and much of a uh, how much of a viable business this is compared to an RCFE?
Yeah. So on the RCFE side, again, speaking from California, there it's always been private pay, and so you might get somebody that comes in that got the Cadillac of insurance policies back in the 70s or 60s, and they have a long term life insurance policy that would pay for it. But for the most part, it's always been private pay. Just recently, there's something called the ALW, Assisted Living Waiver, that the state has. It's a program the state has created to help more low income residents that need placement. And so on the ARF side, you're dealing with the regional center. So the regional center is a third party organization. They are funded by the state, and their job is to make sure that everything that has to do with well being of these residents are taken care of. Housing being a big part of that. And so with them, they are bringing clients, and then they're also paying the bill.
So let's talk about numbers here, Jesse. For the ARF, how much per bed per month do we expect to get paid on the ARF model?
Yeah, so every regional center is different. I think California there's 22 regional centers. Yeah, something like that. I only deal with two, Orange County and LA County. But yeah, there's so many different. So they all have different rates. So like let's say speaking from Orange County standpoint, Orange County is, or I'll say ELARC. So ELARC is Los Angeles County, and they're just shy of $12,000 per bed per resident is what ELARC is paying.
Do you hear that, Hone? $12,000 per bed per month.
It's almost like how, like that's insane numbers.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is people look at the number, but again, at the end of the day, you also have to look at it from that particular resident. So going back to what we talked about, if one resident has one person watching them, they're going to pay $18,000 to $20,000 a month. So with that 12,000, that is including housing, that is including any food that they need inside the home, any supplies to make sure the home's upkept. So and then obviously staffed it in. So another big part that you can kind of get rid of this whole idea of your toilet running, for 24 hours before somebody called you. We have 24-hour staff, so that would never happen because staff is there. As soon as that happens, they're calling somebody. Um, so there is, when you look at the grand scheme of things, yes, it's a big number per month. But the way they're looking at it, they're also calculating, making sure that everything is covered for that particular resident. And that's what we do in the home, is making sure that everything's covered. Doctor's appointments,
Oh,
we
of
take them
course.
to. Dentist appointments, we take them to. Different activities that they would like to join, we take them to. So that number encompasses all that.
Uh, hey man, you give me $12,000 a bed times 6 beds, right? That's 72,000 a month. I'll take care of all of that. Yeah, no problem. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Where would you like to go? What would you like to eat? No problem. No
I
problem.
hear you. I hear you.
Is there like, I mean, here's a maybe an obvious question, but like, is there additional expenses going this model since they're paying more than the other model? Is it like more staff? It's not more
No,
food.
no, yeah. So staff is always going to be the same. So again, you're making sure that you have sufficient staff. The difference would be, let's say for us in particular, other facilities, they do take their residents to the doctors. At our elderly homes, we don't offer transportation. So either they're getting a third party, that their families paying for a third party to come pick their loved one up, or they come pick their loved one up and take them to the doctors. And on this side, obviously, that is going to be a little bit more um, labor intensive because we take them.
Like an Uber? Like, can we just get an Uber, throw them in there, and like,
No, because they're still under you. So now, if they're, let's say you have a resident that is, they can sign themselves in and out of the home, and they're trying to go somewhere, and you pay for an Uber, that's different, because at that point they're signing themselves out. You're no longer responsible for them.
so then you have this like floating employee, right? You have one employee at each house, but then you have this one floater employee who can ride the Uber with the person who needs to go to the doctors, and then they can, do all that kind of stuff. Every once in a while, one of the staff members who's alone in a house, they might need assistance. So that floater person can go to that house, help them for a two man job, 2 woman job, whatever. Hey, we need to lift the table. Okay, come to the house real quick, lift the table. Okay, see you later. I got to ride to the doctors with so and so, and
Yep.
that floater person just kind of does all that. So okay.
Yep. So there's a difference there. But for the most part, everything else, files that look the same, making sure that everything. I guess the only other thing that's different from our side is, again, RCFE side. We don't handle anybody's money or cash. And at times on the ARF side, at times you would have to manage their money. So it's obviously keeping a ledger of that, and making sure that you're all good there. But outside of that, they're really
Manage
pretty
the
similar.
client's money, like the client's, like their actual money that's in their pocket.
Yeah, so let's say they get an SSI payment, Social Security payment, then, and maybe they don't have the mental capacity to handle that and manage that, then we would do that. But we don't do that on the elderly side. Families typically handle all their finances.
Interesting. Okay, so we just have to watch out for the people who are, um, like like where the fraud could happen, where the
Yeah,
embezzlement can happen, and
and I tell people, like, when people ask me what I do, uh, I always say, to sum it up, we develop homes and we build homes for our most vulnerable populations. You're talking about the elderly, and adults with disabilities. There are our two most vulnerable populations. Obviously, taking care of kids is a big thing too, which I do with the daycare. But on this side, it's making sure that people are really well taken care of, and nobody's taking advantage of them. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, your partnership, Alvin, Jesse, what's that partnership dynamic? What is it that you guys do together? What's it look like in the future? What's that?
We're
look
just
like?
like talking on podcasts all day. That's all we do.
Sounds about right.
We like talking to guys like Hone, man.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so for us, like Alvin obviously said already how we met, and we really, I think from the very beginning, we really kind of hit it off. We're very similar in so many different ways, and so I think the dynamic of that is really understanding both sides. You know what Alvin's looking for, what I'm looking for, and what we've obviously have summed up, and that's why we've gotten created a partnership. Is that we're really heading in the same direction, and so from that point is trying to figure out how do we make sure that we create a standard in the industry. We create what when people go to a ARF, when they go to an RCFE, they people walk in and they say this is what it's supposed to look like. And I think we're on the same page on that. I think obviously him going through the things he's going through with his mother. It's definitely he's seen it firsthand. And then obviously it's not hard. You Google any website and you can see really easy how the silver tsunami, the baby boomers, all these things are going to be taking place. Your average person in a residential care facility is going to be, they say 86. We're still 4, 5, 6 years away from the baby boomers being that average age. And so when you really think about the need that's going on right now, there's going to be even bigger need really, really soon. And so it's like, okay, how do we create something in the time being? And I've talked to Alvin about this. I mean, we're where we are. We've taken our lumps and bumps and bruises in this industry, and we've gotten to a point where we learn things every single day. But the foundation of what we do and how we're moving forward, we've figured out pretty good now. And so with Alvin coming in now, it's a way to really fast track what we've been thinking about and what we've been wanting to do for some time now.
Yeah, and then the other part of this too is, you know, Jesse and I both have real estate backgrounds, flipping and all that stuff, and I've been pretty good at building businesses and expanding, and really just relationships a huge part of this, and we both have a pretty good network. But one thing that I've noticed, and Jesse can speak to this too, is a lot of people are trying to get into this business and trying to scale it. A lot of them are scaling it the wrong way. They might be moving too fast. They're not developing the right systems, but maybe their heart is not in the right place. And so that's one of the big things that Jesse and I kind of align with. Is like, look, man, this is not just about the money. This is about, are we actually helping people, and are we creating a product that would actually benefit everybody, not just whoever the investors are, not just whoever the operators are. So that's a huge thing for me because I'm all about mission and purpose and making sure that there's an alignment in vision. And and you can't do this by yourself. This is not a one man dream, man. This is a this is an us dream. And when you lead with value, you lead with purpose, there's nothing that can stop you, actually. So this is why, like Jesse, the minute I met this guy, I'm like, okay, he's great. I love him. He's one way or another. We're gonna figure out a way to work together. So here we are, taking the first steps. Jump right in. We're still figuring out our SOPs, but man, I can see this scaling pretty quickly, given that we should be putting together the right systems in place. Yeah. So
What would you guys say is your different zones of genius? So, like Jesse, like what would you say your zone of genius is in this whole thing? Or another question is, what is not your zone of genius?
Yeah, so the genius part, I would say, is just the bumps and like bruises I'm talking about. I still say I got $150,000 lesson I can teach anybody. And so it's the experience that we've been doing this almost 10 years now. And so it's one of those things. You've heard the quote, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And we're coming up to that 10-year mark. And so with 10 years of doing anything, um, you're going to get pretty good at it. And so for us, or for me in particular, I really feel that being able to recruit and getting people to buy into a bigger purpose, bigger dream of like, hey, we're going to do this the right way. And not only we're going to do it the right way, but there's going to be so much opportunity for everybody else around as we're doing it the right way. And I think that's if I've been good with anything the last couple years is making the mistakes that we've made, is learning from them, adjusting, and getting everybody to buy into what the vision is as we're moving forward.
Okay, so a little leadership there, right? A little leadership, a little recruiting, being able to paint the picture, being able to present what that vision is, getting other people to buy into it, so that you can take this company to that next level. Now you've been operating it for 10 years now, so you do have experience, but there are things within the business that you are better at than other things. Maybe you're not great at creating SOPs. Maybe you have created an SOP, but that doesn't mean that like that's your zone of genius. That's not where you want to focus, right? There.
Yeah, that's definitely not. So for me, I guess it's the vision. It's the vision of what's possible. I tell people all the time when I say it, they look at me like I'm crazy. But when I say we're gonna get to 50, 75, 100 of these homes, that's a big factor. It's a big number. And so it's the vision of how, like, what it is, and then how we're gonna get there. And then obviously in between there, you recruit the right people and you get surrounded by the right individuals, and
Right. And
everything
so
else can
maybe
fall in place.
is that where then Alvin picks up the ball where you're like, okay, we're gonna go here, right? And then you throw the ball and you're not necessarily like doing the 50 homes like that you've painted that vision of. Like you're like, yo, we're gonna do this. And then you're like, okay, I sold the dream. Now how are we gonna do this? Right. And then it's like, okay, let me go find people who are good at what they do. And maybe it's someone like Alvin who's able to find properties, get them renovated, and get them operational to execute that next step of your dream. Is that then how Alvin would fit into the picture? And then Alvin, is that your zone of genius of just being able to mass produce, if you will, these
I would say
properties?
I think Jesse is kind of selling himself a little short here. So in my opinion, I think Jesse is an awesome operator. I think it takes a special person, like I said earlier, to operate one of these and think of it in a larger scale. And so I think his zone of genius is just when he's talking about the vision, but he's actually thinking about not just the big vision, but also the minutia of the operation. He thinks things through, and that's a huge part of this thing, man. That's a talent by itself. So, and where I come in is, I've, as you know, so Hone, like, I mean, my zone of genius is I've always looked into so many different businesses. I have such a unique perspective because I'm able to see things differently from most, I guess. So I'm looking at this as a product that can be scaled in that sense, because my background is product development. And so to me, this is just another avenue that would not only serve that would check I guess my bucket list. One is helping people, and also expanding and having a purpose. So I think Jesse and I have unique backgrounds that put together, we're able to scale this a lot faster and be able to help people sooner. And I think that's why there's magic to happen here. And also, I think Jesse and I are really good with people. Somehow we attract the right people in our group. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree.
What else? So right now you got two pieces of the puzzle, right? We got the Alvin piece and we got the Jesse piece. What other pieces do you need? Somebody listening to this podcast, they're the perfect person if, and like fill in that blank. Who would be the perfect person to come in and really take whatever it is that you guys are both geniuses at and then light that on fire in a good way?
Yeah. So I can start with talking about the SOPs. We have them, obviously, that we operate right now within our home. But I think there's really a next level to me on the SOP, because it's like, if you're doing so, like right now, Alvin's talked about the two homes. That's two homes in 1 month. Eventually, if we're talking about scaling, you're talking about two homes every month. So in order to do that, I think there has to be specific SOPs that have to be put in place for a scalability in that from that standpoint. So I think that would be kind of the next, who that next person is for us, that would come in and create those for us. Whether it's somebody that's part of the company, or whether it's somebody that's contracted out. Obviously there's two different ways there. Um, and then, like anything else, I mean, it takes resources to do what we need to do. For me, I'm always.
And I was going to say that's kind of part of my job is to help scale this thing on the expansion side. Jesse is going to scale the operation side. And so, I think we're aligned in figuring out, okay, what's the next step here? What's the next piece, the puzzle? Obviously, you don't want to move too fast unless you have the capacity to um, be able to handle what's coming, because I can see this expanding pretty quickly, but we need to make sure we kind of also pace it a little bit to make sure we can handle it all.
Yeah, 100%.
There's obviously going to be some challenges along the way, and which leads me to the next question, Jesse. In this show, we're usually asking our guests about challenges, what we call dragons. These are things that we are facing currently, or that we are trying to tame, how we're planning for it. What is our you know uh, daily dragons that we tackle. So right now in your phase of life, is there a challenge? Is there a dragon that you're facing?
Yeah, I would say right now the dragon would be to delegate more. My wife might laugh at that, because she's like, "You do a pretty good job at delegating." But the issue is that right now, as we continue to expand, um, there should be some things that I should not be doing, and I have to get myself out of that mindset of, oh, I'll just knock it out, or and be able to delegate. And if there's somebody that I cannot delegate it to, then obviously there needs to be training in interim to train somebody to do it. So I would say, like today, if I said that there was a dragon, that would be my dragon, is understanding that in order for us to continue to move at the pace we're going to move, there's going to be things that I'm going to have to give up. Just items on my to do list, like, hey, buddy, you can't do those anymore.
Yeah, this is a conversation that Jesse and I have been having about the solopreneur, the DIYpreneur, and then he's still yet to learn that. I'm kind of helping coaching him on that. It's a mindset thing, letting go of things, being able to buy back your time. I introduced him the idea of having an executive assistant or even a virtual assistant. So he's looking into that now. That's incredible, man. So um, look, I think we're having to wrap up this show. Unfortunately, we're a little over our normal time slot here. I think Hone's got like one last question for you.
Yeah, and hey, Jesse, thanks for hanging out until the end, right? Because now we
Yeah.
have the triad of success, right? We on the show we believe that true success is built on three pillars, and that's health, wealth, and relationships. And mastering these areas is key to leading a fulfilling life. So, what key insights or philosophies have you developed in your own journey regarding health, wealth, and relationships?
Oh, that's a good one. I think for me, it's the idea, or allowing myself um, to let go of the word balance. I think in my early 20s, you hear a lot about balance. I at that time I had my own business. I already had kids. Obviously, I was with my wife, and I was coaching football, and so I really, really would stress myself out on like the whole idea of balance and making sure I have balance and make sure I would spend time with my wife and allowing myself to let go of that idea of balance has been the world of difference in my success. I truly now do I don't believe in balance. You can't split yourself. If I'm at my kid's game, I'm there. If I'm at home or I'm at dinner with my wife, I'm there. And so the idea of you trying to balance things and having I should be have this percentage here or this percentage here, the moment that I let that go, uh, it was not only off my own shoulders, but it opened up so much opportunity for me. Again, to be a better father, be a better son, brother, so many different aspects of my life. Husband first and foremost. Um, that was probably the biggest deal for me once I let the idea of balance go.
Got it. Wow. Okay. No, that's a good answer. This whole work life balance, balance this, balance that, myth in Jesse's eyes.
100%.
All right, Jesse, this was really cool, and I know I could probably talk to you for many more hours, and I probably will. Right, I probably will. But where could people find out more about you?
Yeah, so on social media, Facebook, just my name, Jesse Quezada. I'm on Instagram, Jesse X, my last name Quezada. And I think that's enough for me.
That's good enough.
I
All
guess,
right.
those two things, try to stay away from them because they can get your attention for sure. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm for the
even
most part
even
those are
less
mine.
balance, even less
Yeah,
balance in your life with
exactly,
those things. Ah, all
exactly.
right. Well, Jesse, thank you so much. This was a fantastic show. You are full of lots of information and information that people seemingly don't like to share. So thank you for that. Thank you for your generosity, and you will be repaid. Like you will have more success than you know what to deal with. And so, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and Alvin as well. Thank you guys for being partners, because that's how we got you on here, right? So lots of great things coming. Lots of great things coming.
Definitely.
And for everybody else listening, I'm Hone Tai. That's Alvin. That's Jesse. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.
Thank you.
See you later.